She believed her short dress was only a source of shame, until an unexpected glance changed everything. What seemed like just a detail transformed into the beginning of an unlikely connection, capable of facing prejudices and family secrets. Story of love, courage, and surrender beyond appearances. Get ready, because this romance will move you. Subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Sometimes, what embarrasses us is precisely what makes us visible in the eyes of those who truly matter. She clutched the hem of the blue dress between trembling fingers, stretching the already worn fabric while observing her reflection in the elevator mirror. The cold air from the ventilation system made her skin shiver, reminding her once again of how inappropriate that piece was. Too short, too tight, too exposed. The dress had been bought 3 years earlier, when her body didn't yet carry the marks of sleepless nights and hurried meals between one job and another. Emma breathed deeply, feeling the fabric stretch dangerously over her hip. It was already the 3rd day wearing the same dress, not by choice, but by necessity. Her washing machine had broken the week before, flooding the small apartment and ruining half her wardrobe. What remained were some casual pieces, jeans stained with paint, and that blue dress, the only one minimally presentable for the corporate environment where she had worked for just 2 months. The elevator stopped on the 12th floor, and Emma held her breath. The doors opened to the offices of Mitchell Investments, one of the largest brokerage firms in the country, a place where she, with her state college degree and no family connections, never imagined she would work, an environment where people like her, daughter of a housekeeper raised in the suburbs, usually served coffee, not analyzed spreadsheets. "Good morning, Ms. Carter," said the security guard, with a polite smile that didn't reach his eyes. He knew her by name, but Emma knew it was just protocol. "Good morning, Charles." Her low heels, the only ones she could wear without twisting, her ankle, echoed on the marble floor as she walked to her desk. She could feel sideways glances following her, almost imperceptible whispers. Or maybe it was just her imagination, fed by years of insecurity. Emma's desk was in the farthest corner of the floor, almost hidden behind a column. It was there she worked as an administrative assistant, a job obtained after 3 exhausting interviews, and that paid enough to cover rent and college payments. There wasn't much left over. But Emma had learned to survive on little from an early age. She turned on the computer and methodically organized her small collection of colorful post-its, one of the few things she could afford to buy. The morning ritual calmed her, giving her a few minutes to prepare before the chaos of the day began. "Second quarter reports on my desk in 15 minutes. The deep, authoritative male voice made her shoulders stiffen. Gabriel Mitchell, 36 years old, heir and CEO of the company. A man rarely seen smiling, known for firing employees who made the same mistake twice. It was said in the corridors that he had tripled the company's assets in just 5 years, sacrificing personal lives, his and his employees, in the process. "Yes, sir," Emma replied automatically, without looking up. She felt when he stopped. The expensive cologne, notes of wood and something citrusy, lingered in the air for a second longer than normal. Emma kept her eyes fixed on the computer screen, her heart racing for no apparent reason. When she finally looked up, she found Gabriel's dark brown eyes studying her with disconcerting intensity. "You're new here," he said. It wasn't a question. 2 months, sir. Department? Administrative. I'm Mr. Harrison's assistant. Gabriel nodded slightly. His face gave nothing away, neither approval nor disapproval. Just that analytical look that seemed to catalog every detail. "The reports," he reminded, before continuing on his way to the glass office at the end of the corridor. Emma released the air she hadn't realized she was holding. It was the first time Gabriel Mitchell had spoken directly to her. In fact, it was the first time he seemed to even notice her. She stood up hurriedly, adjusting once more the blue dress that insisted on riding up a few centimeters with every movement. She had exactly 13 minutes to gather the reports that, fortunately, she had organized the afternoon before. The day passed normally, or as normally as it could be when wearing the same dress for the third consecutive time. Emma stayed focused on her tasks, avoiding coffee breaks or unnecessary conversations. The less visible she was, the better. At 6:42 p.m., when most employees had already left, Emma was still finalizing data tabulation for the next day's meeting. The golden light of dusk entered through the glass windows, painting elongated shadows through the empty corridors. It was her favorite moment in the office. The silence, the absence of judgmental looks, the peace. Still here, the voice startled her. Gabriel was standing a few meters away, the expensive jacket thrown over his shoulder, tie slightly loose. He looked different without the rigid posture he maintained during business hours. "I'm finishing some charts for tomorrow's presentation," she explained, feeling her cheeks warm. Gabriel approached, observing the screen over her shoulder. Emma could feel the heat emanating from him, his calm breathing, the smell of coffee mixed with expensive cologne. It was disturbingly intimate. "You reversed the axes," he pointed out, leaning even closer. "The percentage values should be on the vertical axis." Emma felt her stomach sink. Such a basic mistake, precisely with Gabriel Mitchell watching. "I'm sorry, I'll correct it immediately," she murmured, her fingers trembling over the keyboard. "Don't apologize," he said, his voice surprisingly less cutting. "Just correct it." While readjusting the chart, Emma felt his gaze on her. It wasn't the same analytical and cold look from the morning. There was something different, something she couldn't decipher. "You've worn the same dress for 3 days," he observed casually. Emma's world stopped. Shame hit her like a wave, suffocating and overwhelming. He had noticed. Of course he had noticed. Gabriel Mitchell, with his custom-made Italian suits and watches that cost more than a year of her salary, had noticed her small blue dress repeated. My washing machine," she began to explain, her voice failing. "It's none of my business," he interrupted, stepping back. "Just an observation." Emma wanted to disappear. She wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. Instead, she forced herself to look up, facing Gabriel with all the dignity she could muster. "The machine broke and flooded my apartment. I lost part of my clothes. I'll have appropriate attire next week, sir." Something passed through his eyes. A shadow, a recognition. For a fleeting instant, Emma thought she saw compassion. "Go home, Miss Carter. The chart can wait until tomorrow." And then he was gone, leaving only the echo of his steps in the empty corridor and a trail of cologne in the air. Emma remained motionless. For a few minutes, hands still trembling, heart beating erratically. That night, in her small apartment still messy from the flood, Emma cried. She cried from shame, exhaustion, frustration. She cried because she knew that the next day she would have to wear that damned blue dress again. What Emma didn't know was that that dress, which embarrassed her so much, had become a small beacon in Gabriel Mitchell's monotonous routine, a man who couldn't remember the last time he had truly noticed someone. The next morning brought a surprise. On Emma's desk, a white box, elegant and without identification. She looked around, confused, before carefully opening the package. Inside, folded with precision, was a black women's suit of soft and visibly expensive fabric. Along with it, a simple card with just one sentence. "For today's presentation, return when you can." There was no signature, but Emma knew. The gesture left her torn between gratitude and humiliation. Was it charity, pity, or just the practicality of a boss who didn't want a poorly dressed employee representing his company? After a few minutes of indecision, Emma took the box and headed to the women's restroom. The suit fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. The cut flattered her silhouette without being provocative. The fabric fell elegantly. For the first time in days, she didn't feel exposed or inadequate. When she returned to her desk, she noticed Gabriel observing her from across the office. He nodded briefly, an almost imperceptible gesture of approval before turning and entering his office. That afternoon's meeting went perfectly. Emma presented the charts, properly corrected, with a confidence she hadn't felt in weeks. The new suit protected her like armor, allowing her competence, not her body, to be the center of attention. After the meeting, when the last client left, Gabriel approached. "Excellent work, Ms. Carter." "Thank you for the suit," she replied, resisting the impulse to thank him effusively. "I'll return it clean tomorrow." "It's not necessary," he said, a barely perceptible half-smile on his lips. "Consider it a company investment." "I can't accept it," Emma insisted, keeping her voice low so others wouldn't hear. "It's too expensive." Gabriel studied her for a moment, as if recalibrating his assessment. "Your work saved the team hours this week." "The charts were impeccable," he said finally. "Consider it an advance bonus." Before Emma could argue, he continued, "My secretary is retiring next month. I'm looking for someone to replace her." Emma's heart accelerated. The executive secretary position to the CEO paid almost double her current salary. "Think about it," Gabriel concluded, before walking away. That night, while carefully hanging the suit in her small bedroom closet, Emma tried to understand what had happened. How had an inadequate blue dress, by some twist of fate, put her on Gabriel Mitchell's radar? What she didn't know was that Gabriel, observing her from across the office that first morning, hadn't just noticed the repeated dress. He had noticed the dignity with which she wore it, the silent competence with which she performed her work, and something more. Something he couldn't even name yet. But that intrigued him deeply. The following weeks brought subtle changes. Emma got an advance and bought a used washing machine. Her wardrobe was gradually rebuilt. Simple pieces, but appropriate for the work environment. The blue dress was stored at the bottom of the drawer, a memory she preferred to forget. Gabriel, in turn, began requesting her presence in more meetings. Small projects were directed to her, opportunities to demonstrate skills beyond basic administrative functions. The offer to replace his secretary was never mentioned directly again, but hung in the air like a tangible possibility. Then came the board meeting, a semi-annual event where the company's largest shareholders gathered to analyze results and future strategies. Emma was assigned to organize Gabriel's presentation, work that would normally be attributed to someone with much more seniority. She spent sleepless nights checking every number, formatting every slide, anticipating every possible question. On the morning of the presentation, she dressed with special care, a simple but elegant grey ensemble, bought especially for the occasion. The meeting room was intimidating, a dark wood table that seated 20 people, all in expensive suits and serious expressions. Emma sat discreetly in a corner, ready to assist with any technical detail. Gabriel entered last, impeccable as always. His gaze briefly met Emma's before heading to the center of the room. The presentation began. Everything was going perfectly until one of the oldest shareholders, a gray-haired man with a perpetually discontented expression, interrupted. "These numbers don't match what I received last week." Was there a change in the calculations? A silent tension took over the room. Gabriel hesitated for a fraction of a second, enough time for Emma to realize he had been caught by surprise. "The numbers were updated yesterday," she heard herself saying before even processing that she was speaking. All heads turned in her direction. The exchange rate variation from last week significantly impacted third-quarter projections. "I can show the comparative spreadsheet if you wish." The silence that followed was deafening. Emma felt blood drain from her face. She had just interrupted a board meeting. She had just contradicted one of the company's largest shareholders. To her surprise, Gabriel nodded. "Ms. Carter is correct. The projections were adjusted based on the most recent Federal Reserve data. If you'll allow me, I can detail the impact of these variations." The meeting continued, and the crisis was averted. When everyone left, only Gabriel and Emma remained in the room. "That could have been a disaster," he said, closing his briefcase. "I'm sorry for the intrusion," Emma replied, gathering courage to face the consequences. "It wasn't my place to speak." Gabriel looked up, studying her with that intensity that still disconcerted her. "You saved the meeting," he corrected. "How did you know about the numbers update?" "I review all reports before including them in presentations," she explained. "I noticed the discrepancy and checked the cause." A slow, genuine smile transformed Gabriel's face. It was the first time Emma had seen him smile like that. Not the polite, calculated smile from client meetings, but something real, almost private. "The executive secretary position is yours if you're still interested," he said. Emma felt a wave of warmth rise from her neck to her cheeks. The opportunity that would change her professional life had just been offered on a silver platter. Yes, I'm interested. Thank you for the opportunity." Gabriel continued to observe her for a moment longer than professionally appropriate. "Have dinner with me tonight," he said finally, "to discuss the details of the new position." It wasn't a request, nor exactly an order. It hung somewhere between the two, leaving space for a polite refusal. "Would that be appropriate?" Emma asked carefully. "Probably not," Gabriel admitted, that half smile still playing on his lips. "But I'm willing to risk it if you are." There was something in his eyes, a vulnerability, a question, that Emma had never seen before. For a moment, he wasn't the powerful CEO, the millionaire heir, the untouchable boss. He was just a man, inviting a woman to dinner. 8 o'clock, she replied, surprised by her own audacity. But not to discuss work. Gabriel's smile widened, illuminating his face in a way that made him almost unrecognizable. Younger, more accessible. Agreed. When he left, Emma remained motionless, trying to process what had just happened. Somewhere inside her, a warning voice sounded. Getting involved with the boss was the oldest and most dangerous cliché in the corporate world. It was risking. Her reputation, her job, everything she had conquered with so much effort. But there was something more, something that silenced that prudent voice. The way Gabriel looked at her, not as an object of desire, but as someone he truly saw, someone whose intelligence and competence he respected. That night, while preparing for dinner, Emma hesitated before the open closet. Her fingers touched the blue dress, now hidden at the bottom of the drawer. On an impulse she couldn't explain, she removed it and held it against her body. The dress that had embarrassed her so much, that had made her feel small and inadequate, now carried a different meaning. It was with it that Gabriel had first noticed her. Not just as an employee, but as a person. With a nostalgic smile, Emma carefully folded the blue dress and put it away again. Tonight she would wear something different. Something that represented not who she was, but who she was becoming. The restaurant chosen by Gabriel surprised Emma. It wasn't one of the elegant and pretentious establishments frequented by the city's financial elite, but a small Italian bistro on a quiet street with dark wood tables and soft candlelight. He was already there when she arrived, without the formal work suit, wearing a dark blue shirt and dress pants. He looked different, more relaxed, almost like an ordinary person. "Came," he said, standing to pull out the chair for her. There was a note of relief in his voice, as if he had considered the possibility of being left waiting. "I said I would come," Emma replied, sitting down. A momentary silence hung between them. Not uncomfortable, but charged with unspoken possibilities. It was strange to be there, outside the office context, without the hierarchy that normally defined their relationship. "You look different," Gabriel observed finally. Emma had chosen a simple black dress, which she had bought with her first salary at Mitchell Investments. Nothing extravagant, but elegant enough for the occasion. "Different good or different bad?" she asked, allowing herself a smile. "Different you," he replied, his eyes fixed on hers. Without the office armor, the observation caught her off guard. It was exactly how she felt about him. You too, Emma admitted, almost unrecognizable without the "I'm going to fire someone today" expression. Gabriel laughed, a genuine and relaxed sound that completely transformed his face. Emma realized she had never heard him laugh like that in the office. "Is that my reputation?" "Among others," she replied, feeling more at ease. "They say you have a blacklist of employees and review it every Friday." "Impressive," he commented, still smiling, "and completely false." Wine was served, an Italian, red that Gabriel chose without consulting the menu. The familiarity with which he did it suggested he frequented the place regularly. "Do you come here often?" Emma asked, observing him swirl the wine glass. "It's one of the few places where I can just be Gabriel," he replied, a slight shrug accompanying his words. Without being Richard Mitchell's son, the CEO, the heir. There was something vulnerable in the way he said that, an admission rarely offered. "It must be difficult," Emma commented, "carrying such a heavy name." Gabriel observed her over the wineglass, as if evaluating whether she was being sincere or just polite. "People see the privilege," he said finally. "They don't see the expectations, the pressure. My father built an empire from nothing. Anything less than perfection is considered failure. And that's why you demand perfection from others," Emma concluded, the pieces fitting together. "I demand excellence," he corrected gently. "There's a difference." Dinner proceeded with surprising ease. They talked about books, movies, places they'd like to visit. Gabriel told about his brief rebellion at 20, when he almost dropped economics to study photography. Emma spoke about growing up in the suburbs, only child of a single mother, and how she had worked 3 jobs simultaneously to pay for college. They were different worlds, lives that should never have crossed. And yet, there they were, discovering common ground, laughing at the same jokes, sharing stories like old friends. "Why? Did you notice me?" Emma finally asked, the question that had troubled her from the beginning. "That day, with the blue dress. Why did you stop at my desk?" Gabriel was silent for a moment, as if the question had surprised him. When he answered, his voice had a different tone, softer, almost intimate. "You were concentrated, completely absorbed in work. Everyone around you was checking the clock, talking, procrastinating. But you were really present." He paused, taking a sip of wine before continuing. "And there was something about the way you held that pen, as if it were the most important thing in the world at that moment. It was captivating." Emma felt warmth rise from her neck to her cheeks. It wasn't the answer she expected. "So it wasn't the dress?" she asked, half joking, half serious. Gabriel smiled, that slow and genuine smile that transformed his face. "The dress I only noticed later," he admitted. "When I realized it was the same one for 3 days straight, I got curious about why." "A sad story about a broken washing machine," Emma replied, laughing softly. "And still, you never let it affect your work," Gabriel observed. "Many people would have used it as an excuse, would have slowed down. You didn't." There was admiration in his voice, genuine, not rehearsed. When dinner ended, they walked side by side on the sidewalk. The night was cool, the sky surprisingly starry for a big city. Their arms occasionally touched, creating small electric currents that ran through Emma's skin. "Can I take you home?" Gabriel offered, indicating the car parked at the corner. A discreetly luxurious model, not the type of vehicle that screamed, "I'm a millionaire." "I don't know if it's a good idea," Emma replied honestly. "We're crossing a dangerous line, Gabriel." It was the first time she had used his first name. It sounded strange and familiar at the same time. "Probably not," he agreed, stopping to face her. "But I'm still willing to risk it." The softness in his voice, the vulnerability in his eyes, all of this made Gabriel seem more human, more accessible than Emma ever imagined possible. "I work for you," she reminded, trying to be the voice of reason. You literally control my salary, my livelihood. What if it weren't like that? He asked. If there weren't the company between us? But there is, Emma insisted, even as her heart accelerated with his proximity. And ignoring that would be irresponsible. Gabriel nodded slowly, respecting her argument, even though disappointment was visible in his eyes. Then let's do this right, he said finally. You won't work directly for me anymore. The executive secretary promotion stands, but you'll report to the financial director, not me. That doesn't solve the problem, Emma argued. You're still the CEO. But it removes the direct conflict, Gabriel counter-argued, and gives us a chance to discover this. He gestured between them. Whatever it is. The proposal was tempting, extremely tempting. But Emma knew nothing was that simple. I need to think, she said finally. There's a lot at stake. Gabriel nodded, respecting her caution. Think as long as you need, he replied. I'm not going anywhere. When they said goodbye, there was no kiss, not even a hug. Just a prolonged look, charged with unrealized possibilities. Emma took a taxi home, her mind full of contradictory thoughts. Part of her wanted to throw caution to the wind and dive headfirst into this unexpected connection. Another part, the pragmatic, the cautious, reminded her of all the risks involved. While opening her apartment door, one question persisted. What would happen if she said yes? If she allowed her life, so carefully planned and controlled, to be redirected by this unexpected encounter? What Emma didn't know was that, a few miles away, Gabriel was contemplating the same questions, and that neither of them was prepared for the complications that were about to arise. The office buzzed with rumors the next morning. Emma noticed the furtive glances and whispers that ceased when she approached. News of her promotion had spread, and with it, the inevitable speculations. I heard she's the financial director's wife's niece, a female voice murmured as Emma passed. Through the corridor. No way. I bet there's something more behind it, another replied, not bothering to lower her tone. Nobody rises that fast without, you know. Emma kept her chin up, pretending not to hear. She had expected this. In a corporate world where women rarely occupied positions of power, any rapid ascension was viewed with suspicion, especially when it involved someone like her, without family connections, without an MBA from elite universities. Upon reaching her new desk, significantly larger and better positioned than the previous one, she found a white envelope with her name. Inside, an official memorandum announcing her promotion, effective immediately, and instructions to report to David Harrison, financial director. Gabriel had kept his word. She wouldn't work directly for him. The first weeks in her new position were a whirlwind. The workload doubled, as did the responsibilities. Emma arrived before everyone and left after, determined to prove she deserved that opportunity. Gabriel maintained professional distance. In the corridors, he limited himself to polite greetings. In meetings, he treated her with the same formal courtesy he dispensed to other employees. To anyone observing from the outside, there was nothing beyond the normal relationship between a CEO and a promoted junior employee. But there were the small moments. A coffee left on her desk on mornings when she arrived particularly early, still hot, exactly how she liked it. A perceptive comment during a meeting, noting a suggestion she had made days before. The way his eyes occasionally found hers across the room, communicating something only the two of them understood. It was on one of those mornings, 3 weeks after her promotion, that Emma found a small card next to the usual coffee. Dinner. Today. Same place, same time. Still willing to risk it. G. Her heart accelerated. During these weeks, she had constantly thought about that night, replaying every word, every gesture. She had weighed pros and cons, calculated risks, questioned her own motivations. The most sensible thing would be to refuse, build a definitive barrier, focus exclusively on the career she had worked so hard for. But there was something about Gabriel, something beyond power, money, position, that attracted her in a way she had never experienced, a connection that seemed to transcend the circumstances that separated them. That night, Emma found herself again at the small Italian bistro, wearing a new dress, dark green, elegant without being ostentatious. Gabriel was already there as before. His face lit up when he saw her enter, that rare, genuine smile transforming his features. "You came," he said, standing up. "I'm curious to see where this leads," Emma replied, honestly sitting down. "Does that mean you've thought about us?" Emma nodded slowly, choosing her words carefully. "I thought a lot. And I came to the conclusion that, professionally, it's a calculated risk. I don't work directly for you. I have documented proof of my competence. When this ends, I'll have built a solid resume." Gabriel raised an eyebrow, a mix of amusement and challenge in his gaze. "When it ends? All things eventually end," she replied pragmatically. "Pessimist." "Realist," Emma corrected. "We're from different worlds, Gabriel. I grew up in a 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs. My mother cleaned houses to put me through school. People like me don't end up with people like you in real life." Fairy tales. Gabriel studied her for a long moment, something softening in his gaze. "Maybe it's exactly because we're from different worlds that this is worth it," he said finally. "Everything in my world is calculated, predicted, arranged. You're the only unpredictable variable that's appeared in years." There was a disarming sincerity in his words that made Emma's heart accelerate. "So what are we doing exactly?" she asked, feeling suddenly vulnerable. "Discovering," Gabriel replied simply. "One day at a time. No labels, no pressure, no expectations beyond the moment." It was a tempting proposal. The freedom to explore without the weight of social conventions or predefined expectations. "Day at a time," Emma agreed, raising her wine glass. "I can handle that." Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. What began as occasional dinners evolved into something deeper, more meaningful. They established unwritten rules. No displays of affection in the office. No mention of the relationship in professional environments. Absolute discretion in public, too. The outside world, they were just colleagues with a cordial relationship. Only their private moments revealed the truth. The late-night conversations that extended until dawn, the lazy Sundays at Gabriel's apartment, the small daily discoveries about each other. Emma got to know a Gabriel that few saw, the man who woke at 5 in the morning to photograph the sunrise, who knew Pablo Neruda poems by heart, who kept a collection of toy cars carefully stored on a shelf. A complex man, with insecurities and dreams that completely contradicted his public image. Gabriel, in turn, discovered layers of Emma that she rarely revealed. Her passion for Russian literature, her secret talent for drawing, the silent strength that had sustained her through a difficult childhood and a youth of privations. In their most vulnerable moments, lying side by side in darkness, they shared fears they didn't dare admit in daylight. "Sometimes I'm sure I'm going to fail," Gabriel confessed one night, his voice almost a whisper. "That I'm not up to my father's legacy, that I'll be the one who destroyed everything he built. And sometimes I wake up sure that all this is a mistake," Emma replied, tracing invisible patterns on his chest. "That I'm fooling myself thinking I can belong to your world. That at some point, everyone will realize I'm an imposter." There was brutal honesty in those moments, a connection that went beyond the physical, beyond the intellectual, reaching something deeper and more fundamental. But the outside world wouldn't stay outside forever. The first sign of storm came. On a common Wednesday morning, Emma was preparing the meeting room for a presentation when she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she found a tall woman, elegantly dressed, observing her with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be the new secretary," the woman said, extending a hand with perfectly manicured nails. "I'm Isabella Worthington." The name caused an immediate chill in Emma. Isabella Worthington, Gabriel's ex-girlfriend, daughter of one of the country's most influential bankers. Their relationship had been widely documented in society columns years before, ending shortly before Emma joined the company. "Emma Carter," she replied, accepting the handshake. "Can I help you with something?" "Just waiting for Gabriel," Isabella replied, the use of his first name a subtle declaration of intimacy. "We have lunch scheduled. Family business." Before Emma could respond, Gabriel entered the room. For a fleeting moment, his gaze showed surprise, perhaps even alarm, at seeing the two women together. "Isabella," he said, quickly recovering. "I didn't know you'd come so early." "I decided to surprise you," she replied, approaching to kiss him on both cheeks with familiarity. "I hope you don't mind." Gabriel's discomfort was palpable, but his professional mask quickly fell into place. "Ms. Carter, could you check if the documents for the 2 o'clock meeting are ready?" he asked, his voice neutral, with no indication of the intimacy they shared outside those walls. "Of course, sir," Emma replied automatically, the formal title, leaving a strange taste in her mouth. As she left the room, she caught Isabella's soft voice. "Dad asked about you at Sunday dinner. He said he misses you at family meetings." The door closed behind Emma, leaving her outside that world to which Gabriel belonged. A world of business lunches disguised as social encounters, family connections worth millions, relationships built on strategic alliances. That night, for the first time since they had started seeing each other, Gabriel didn't call. There was no message, no explanation. Emma stayed awake until late, watching the silent phone, feeling familiar insecurity creeping back. The next morning, she found him in the coffee room, pouring the strong beverage that helped him face long work hours. His eyes were shadowed by dark circles indicating a poorly slept night. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly, making sure they were alone. Gabriel nodded, leading her to a small empty meeting room. "About yesterday," he began as soon as he closed the door. Isabella showed up without warning. It wasn't a planned meeting. "You don't need to explain," Emma replied automatically, pride preventing her from showing how much it had affected her. "Yes." "I do," Gabriel insisted, approaching, "because I saw your face when you left that room, and because you deserve to know the truth." He ran his hand through his hair, a rare gesture of nervousness that Emma had learned to recognize. "Isabella, it's complicated. Our families have done business together for generations. We grew up practically together. Everyone always expected us to marry eventually." "A modern arranged marriage," Emma commented, trying to keep her voice neutral. "In a way," Gabriel admitted. "We dated for a while years ago. It didn't work out. I ended it. She never really accepted it. And now she's back, apparently." He sighed deeply. "Her father is sick, terminal cancer. He has a few months to live." "I'm sorry," Emma said automatically. "He wants to organize things before leaving," Gabriel continued, each word coming with difficulty. "Companies, properties, Isabella's future." The silence that followed was charged with something unsaid, something that hung between them like a shadow. "And what does that have to do with you?" Emma asked, though she already knew the answer. Gabriel turned to face her, his eyes reflecting the internal struggle he was waging. Worthington Holdings and Mitchell Investments have intertwined businesses for generations. If one falls, the other suffers. Edward is proposing a formal merger, sealed by a marriage. The words fell like stones in the space between them. "A marriage," Emma repeated, her voice almost a whisper. "Between you and Isabella." It wasn't a question. It was confirmation of what Helena had implied, what Emma had feared from the beginning. "It's just a business proposal," Gabriel hurried to explain. "It means nothing. I haven't even responded yet. But you'll consider it, Emma concluded, seeing the truth in his eyes. You have to consider it. Gabriel took a step toward her, but Emma instinctively stepped back. It's complicated, Emma. There are jobs at stake, my father's legacy, years of work, and there's us, she interrupted, her voice finding strength despite the tears. Or doesn't that weigh in your consideration? Of course it weighs, Gabriel replied, frustration evident in his voice. You're the most important thing in my life now, but I can't simply ignore everything else that exists. I have responsibilities. Emma looked at him, really looked, and saw not just the man she had learned to love, but also the heir, the CEO, the son of Richard Mitchell, someone for whom decisions were rarely just personal. I understand, she said finally, and really did understand. You have to do what's best for everyone. Emma, please, Gabriel pleaded, perceiving the distance growing between them. It's not that simple. Actually, it is, she replied, a strange calm taking over her. It always was. I just refused to see it. She approached him, touching his face one last time, memorizing every detail. Your mother is right, Gabriel. People like me don't end up with people like you. Not in this world. And I'm tired of trying to force something that maybe should never have started. Don't do this, he asked, his voice breaking. Don't give up on us because of them. I'm not giving up because of them, Emma corrected softly. I'm recognizing the reality that exists between us. A reality that perhaps both of us have tried to ignore for too long. She stepped away, each step requiring more strength than she imagined she possessed. I won't be the reason you betray your responsibilities, your family, everything you've built. And I can't continue being the person waiting in the shadows, never completely accepted, always the outsider. Emma, wait, Gabriel called, desperation in his voice. We can find a solution, together. That word, together, which before carried so much promise, now sounded empty, an echo of possibilities that would never be realized. Goodbye, Gabriel, she said simply, before turning and walking into the house, back to the salon, where she picked up her purse without looking at Helena or Isabella, and then to the exit, where she called a taxi. On the way home, the tears she had contained finally found freedom. Emma cried, not just for the lost relationship, but for the illusion she had nurtured. The idea that love would be enough to overcome social barriers, family expectations, the completely different worlds they came from. She had been naive, and now paid the price. The days that followed passed in a blur of mechanical routines. Emma went to work, executed her tasks with automatic precision, and returned home. She avoided areas of the office where she might encounter Gabriel, communicating only through formal emails when necessary. He tried to reach her, messages, calls, even a bouquet of flowers left on her desk. Emma remained firm in her decision. The gap between them was too wide, the complications too many. It was during this dark period that her mother fell ill, a pneumonia diagnosis that quickly transformed into something more serious, requiring hospitalization. Emma requested leave from work, dividing her time between the crowded public hospital and the small apartment they had shared for years. It was there, on a Saturday afternoon while organizing old papers, that she found the blue dress again. It was folded at the bottom of a drawer forgotten for months. Emma held it against the light, observing the worn fabric, the slightly frayed hem, a symbol of where it all began. With a sigh, she set it aside. That chapter was closed. It was time to move forward. When her mother finally received discharge, 2 weeks later, Emma made a decision. She would resign from Mitchell Investments, start over, at another company, away from memories, away from Gabriel. On the morning she planned to deliver her resignation letter, Emma arrived earlier than usual. She wanted to clean her desk, collect her belongings with the minimum possible exposure. To her surprise, she found David Harrison, the financial director, waiting for her. "Ms. Carter, I need to speak with you," he said, his tone serious. "In private." He led her to his office, closing the door behind them. "I suppose this is about my resignation," Emma said, removing the envelope from her purse. "I was prepared to deliver it today." Harrison seemed surprised. "Resignation? No, it's not about that. It's about Gabriel." Emma's heart accelerated against her will. "What about him? He hasn't appeared at the office for 3 days. Doesn't answer calls, doesn't respond to emails. Richard is out of the country and nobody can locate him." Emma frowned, immediate concern overriding any hurt. "That's not typical of him." "No, it's not," Harrison agreed. "And there's something else. The merger with Worthington Holdings was canceled. Definitively. Gabriel informed the board 2 days ago before disappearing." The information caught Emma completely off guard. Canceled? But how? Why? Harrison sighed deeply. "He said only that the personal cost was too high. Nobody understood at the time, but..." He hesitated, studying Emma with perceptive eyes. "I think you might understand." Emma felt suddenly exposed, as if her relationship with Gabriel was being discussed openly. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I think you're the only person who can find him now," Harrison replied simply. "And because despite what everyone thinks, I care about that boy. I've worked with him for years. I've never seen him as alive as in recent months, and never seen him as lost as now." Emma hesitated, torn between the desire to help and the instinct of self-preservation. Where have they looked? His apartment, friends' houses, family properties. Nothing. Emma reflected for a moment, mentally reviewing conversations, shared, memories, mentioned places. "There's a cabin," she said finally, "on the North Shore. He mentioned once, a place where he went as a child when he needed to escape." Harrison nodded slowly. "The Mitchell property in the Hamptons. I didn't think of that." "I can go there," Emma offered, surprised by her own willingness. "Just to check if he's okay." "Thank you," Harrison said, sincerity evident in his voice. "And Emma, whatever happened between you two, he's not the man everyone thinks he is. Trust me, I've known Gabriel since he was a stubborn boy running through these office corridors." The words stayed with Emma during the entire car trip to the coast. 3 hours on the road, alone with her thoughts, reliving every moment with Gabriel, questioning every decision she had made. When she finally reached the property, a cabin that was actually a luxury beach house on an isolated stretch of coast, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Gabriel's car was parked outside, confirming his presence. Emma hesitated before knocking on the door, uncertain about what she would say, how he would react to seeing her. Finally, breathing deeply, she knocked. There was no answer. She knocked again, louder this time. Silence. Worried, Emma tried the handle. The door was unlocked. The house was silent and partially dark. Only the golden light of sunset entering through large windows facing the sea. There were signs of recent presence: a coffee cup on the table, scattered papers, an open laptop. "Gabriel," she called, advancing cautiously. The sound of waves breaking on the beach was the only response. Following her instinct, Emma headed to the glass doors that led to the wooden deck. It was there she found him, sitting in a beach chair, watching the ocean, a half-empty whiskey bottle beside him. "You took your time," he said without turning, his voice hoarse as if it hadn't been used for days. Emma stopped a few steps away, surprised. "You knew I would come." Gabriel finally turned, and the sight of him made Emma's heart tighten. He was pale, unshaven, eyes red from fatigue or crying, perhaps both. "I hoped," he replied simply. "When I decided to end everything, I hoped you would know." "End everything?" Emma repeated, confused. "Harrison said you canceled the merger, but..." "Not just the merger," Gabriel interrupted, gesturing to the papers. scattered inside the house. Everything. I resigned as CEO, transferred my shares to a trust fund. I'm out, Emma. Completely out. The revelation left her speechless. It was unthinkable. Gabriel Mitchell leaving the empire his father had built, the legacy he had been prepared to assume since birth. Why? She asked finally, approaching to sit in the chair beside him. Gabriel looked at the ocean again, the wind tousling his already disheveled hair. Because I realized something when you left that house that night, he said softly. I realized I was living the life others expected of me, not the one I wanted. That I was repeating the cycle that made my parents unhappy, that drove away my sister, that almost destroyed our family. He took a sip straight from the bottle before continuing. My mother married my father for convenience, an arrangement between families like what they wanted for me and Isabella. She loved someone else, an artist, someone her family considered inadequate. Emma felt a chill run down her spine with the obvious parallel. She gave him up to marry my father, Gabriel continued, his voice thick with emotion, and spent the rest of her life living with that choice. Her coldness, her rigidity, all of it is armor against regret. She told you this? Emma asked. Softly, Gabriel nodded. The night after you left. We had a terrible fight. I accused her of sabotaging the only real thing in my life. That's when she broke down, when the mask finally fell. He turned to Emma, his eyes meeting hers with devastating intensity. She cried, Emma. I had never seen my mother cry before, and she told me she was trying to protect me from the same pain she's carried for decades. The regret of choosing duty over love. Emma felt her own tears rising, the emotion of the revelation hitting her deeply. And then? And then I understood, Gabriel replied simply. I understood I was at a crossroads. I could do what was expected. Marry Isabella, assume the empire, perpetuate the cycle. Or I could do something no one in my family ever had the courage to do. Choose my own happiness. He extended his hand, touching Emma's face with a gentleness that contrasted with his disheveled appearance. I chose you, Emma. Even without knowing if you would choose me back. Even without knowing if it was already too late. I at least had to try. Emma closed her eyes, letting the tears finally fall. You gave up everything, she murmured, the magnitude of his sacrifice finally hitting her. No, Gabriel corrected softly. I only gave up what was never really mine to begin with. My father's legacy, my mother's expectations, the traditions of a family that never asked me what I wanted. He held her hands, his eyes meeting Emma's with a clarity that wasn't there before. What I want is you, Emma. A life we build together, on our terms. Not as a Mitchell and a Carter, but as Gabriel and Emma, two people who met by chance, because of a blue dress and a broken washing machine. Emma let out a wet laugh through tears, the memory of those first days suddenly vivid. Are you really willing to give up all of this? She asked, still unable to completely believe. Your father will be furious. My mother understands. Deep down, Gabriel replied surprisingly. I think part of her even admires the courage she herself never had. He sighed, looking at the horizon where the sun had almost disappeared. As for my father, he'll have to accept eventually. And if he doesn't, Gabriel shrugged, a freedom in the gesture Emma had never seen before. Then it's his loss. They remained in silence for a moment, the sound of waves filling the space between them. And now? Emma asked finally. What happens next? Gabriel smiled, a genuine smile that illuminated his tired face. That depends on you. I'm offering everything I am, Emma. Not the CEO, not the heir, just the man. Is it enough? Emma studied him under the golden light of day's end. The man she had met in corporate corridors. The same one who had noticed a repeated blue dress, who had seen beyond appearances. who now was willing to reinvent his life for her. In response, she leaned forward, her lips meeting his in a kiss that carried promises, forgiveness, and possibilities. "It's more than enough," she murmured against his lips. It always was. 3 months later, life had taken directions that neither Emma nor Gabriel could have predicted. Richard Mitchell, after initial fury, had reached an agreement with his son. Gabriel would maintain a position on the board, but without operational involvement in the company, a compromise that allowed him to follow his own path without completely cutting family ties. Helena, surprisingly, had been the first to extend a bridge. An invitation for tea, just her and Emma, without Gabriel. A tense meeting initially, that slowly evolved into something unexpected. Not exactly friendship, but mutual respect born from shared understanding about difficult choices. "You gave my son something I never could," Helena had said that day, her usual composure giving way to rare vulnerability. The courage to choose his own happiness. As for Edward Worthington, his health had deteriorated rapidly. Isabella had taken over the family businesses, demonstrating competence that surprised many. Her initial hostility toward Emma gradually transformed into distant acceptance, especially after she herself found romantic interest in a young European. Ambassador Emma left Mitchell Investments, not out of shame or resentment, but by choice. With Gabriel's support, she started her own financial consulting business focused on small companies, a niche ignored by large corporations, but vital to the local economy. And Gabriel rediscovered his passion for photography, documenting traditional communities along the American coast. His work began gaining recognition, not as Gabriel Mitchell, heir, but as an artist on his own merit. They bought a simple but comfortable house, close to the sea. Not as grand as the Mitchell mansion, but infinitely more welcoming. A place where both could be simply themselves, without the masks the corporate world demanded. It was on a Saturday morning, while arranging Emma's last belongings for the definitive move, that she found the blue dress again. "Look what I found," she said, holding it against the light entering through the window of the small apartment she would soon leave behind. Gabriel approached, a nostalgic smile on his lips. "The beginning of everything," he commented, touching the fabric with reverence. "I should throw it away," Emma pondered. "It's so worn, and it reminds me of difficult times." Gabriel shook his head, taking the dress from her hands. "No," he said, softly. "Some things, even imperfect, deserve to be preserved. To remind us where we came from." He carefully folded the dress, placing it in the memory box they would take to the new house. "You know what I like most about this whole story?" Gabriel asked, pulling Emma into his arms. "What?" "That it all started with something you considered a flaw, an inadequacy. That dress you hated wearing." He kissed her forehead softly. "It was exactly what made me really see you." Emma smiled, resting her head on his chest. "Sometimes our greatest vulnerabilities end up being our greatest strengths," she reflected. "And sometimes," Gabriel added, "what seems like a disaster, like a broken washing machine, ends up being the beginning of something extraordinary." That night, after finalizing the move and settling into their new house, they sat on the wooden deck, watching the sea under the starry sky. Not as a CEO and an assistant, not as a Mitchell and a Carter, but simply as Gabriel and Emma, two unlikely lovers who had defied entire worlds to be together. And somewhere inside that house, carefully stored in a memory box, the blue dress remained. A reminder that sometimes what embarrasses us is exactly what makes us visible in the eyes of those who truly matter. Emma and Gabriel's new life flourished like a plant that finally finds suitable soil after years in sterile ground. Away from corporate pressures and family expectations, they discovered their own rhythm, a synchronized dance of two people learning to exist, not just as a couple, but as renewed individuals. Mornings began early, with the sun rising over the ocean, painting the bedroom in golden tones. Gabriel usually woke first, silently taking his camera to capture Emma asleep, hair spread across the pillow, face at peace. These photos were never shown to anyone. They were private treasures, frozen moments of an intimacy both had fought to conquer. Emma's consulting practice grew slowly but with solid foundations. She had found purpose in helping small entrepreneurs navigate the financial world that once seemed reserved only for the privileged. Her knowledge of large corporations' inner workings became an unexpected advantage. She knew the game from the inside and could teach others to play it. "You transformed your biggest disadvantage into your most powerful strength," Gabriel commented one night, watching her work on a financial plan for a small family bakery. "How so?" Emma asked, looking up from the scattered papers. "You always felt like an outsider in the corporate world. Now it's exactly that outside perspective that allows you to see opportunities others miss." Emma smiled, recognizing the truth. In his words, what once made her feel inadequate now was her greatest competitive advantage. Gabriel's photographic work also found its path. His images of traditional fishermen, local artisans, and coastal landscapes began attracting attention, first from small local galleries, then from specialized publications. There was authenticity in his work that resonated with people, a genuine connection with the subjects he photographed. "It's because you really see them," Emma observed, after his first successful exhibition. "Not as picturesque elements or objects of curiosity, but as real people, with real stories." "I learned that from you," Gabriel replied, intertwining his fingers with hers. "You taught me to really see beyond appearances." Weekends were dedicated to exploring small coastal towns, rural communities, hidden beaches. Gabriel drove the modest SUV that had replaced his sports car, while Emma controlled the playlist, an eclectic mix that reflected their combined tastes. On these trips, they discovered not just new places, but new facets of each other. Not that everything was perfect. There were arguments about money, about boundaries, about the balance between independence and partnership. Gabriel, accustomed to controlling everything around him, needed to learn to loosen the reins. Emma, used to fighting alone for every achievement, had difficulty accepting help or sharing vulnerabilities. "I don't need you to solve all problems for me," she said during a particularly heated discussion, after Gabriel tried to invest a substantial amount in her consulting business without consulting her. "I'm trying to help, not control," he replied, frustrated. "Why is it so hard for you to accept this?" "Because I've spent my whole life proving I can do things on my own," Emma explained, her voice softening. "If I accept your financial help, now how will I know I succeeded on my own merit?" Gabriel observed her for a long moment, finally understanding. "Your pride is both your greatest strength and your greatest weakness," he said finally. "Just like my need for control." They laughed then, a laugh of mutual recognition, of acceptance of the imperfections that made them who they were. The solution came in the form of a compromise. Gabriel could invest in the consulting business, but as a silent investor, with clear and professional terms, Emma would maintain total control over operational decisions and pay back the investment with fair interest. "Business is business," she said, signing the formal contract they had drafted together. "Even between lovers." "Especially between lovers," Gabriel corrected, sealing the agreement with a kiss. It was on one of these weekend trips, about 6 months after the move, that Gabriel surprised her with an unplanned detour. "Where are we going?" Emma asked, noticing they had left the main road. "Trust me," was all he replied, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. The path wound through a slope covered with coastal vegetation, gradually climbing until revealing a panoramic view of the ocean. Gabriel parked at a small natural lookout and asked Emma to follow him. A narrow trail led to a clearing where, to her surprise, a small table had been prepared. White tablecloth, 2 glasses, a bottle of wine cooling in an ice bucket. "What is this?" she asked, emotion coloring her voice. "An anniversary," Gabriel replied, pulling out a chair for her. Today marks exactly 1 year since you wore that blue dress for the first time in the office. 1 year since I really saw you. Emma felt unexpected tears forming in her eyes. The fact that he remembered, that he celebrated not a conventional milestone, but the moment their lives had begun to intertwine, touched her deeply. You kept track of this. Of every important moment, he confirmed, serving the wine. The first day we spoke. The day of spilled coffee in the meeting, our first dinner. The night you left my parents' house. The day you found me at the beach cabin. The precision of his memory, the importance he attributed to each shared moment, was more precious to Emma than any material gift could be. I have something for you, Gabriel said, removing a small box from his pocket. Emma's heart accelerated involuntarily. Despite months together, they had never discussed marriage or formal commitments. Part of her still wondered if they would ever reach that point, if the differences between their worlds wouldn't resurface eventually. The box, when opened, revealed not a ring, but a delicate silver chain with a small blue pendant, the same shade as the dress that had started everything. To always remember where we came from, Gabriel explained, as Emma touched the jewelry with trembling fingers. And how the most unexpected things can completely change our lives. He placed the chain around her neck, his fingers gently brushing the sensitive skin. It's perfect, Emma murmured, moved by the symbolism of the gift. The sun was beginning to set, casting golden shadows over them, when Gabriel finally made the question he had planned. I'm thinking of accepting a long-term photographic project, he said, slight nervousness in his voice. Documenting traditional communities along the coast, from north to south of the country. It would take several months, maybe a year. Emma felt a tightness in her chest. It would be their first prolonged separation since they had begun living together. It's an incredible opportunity, she replied, genuinely happy for him despite the prospect of distance. I want you to come with me, Gabriel continued, taking her hands in his. Not all the time. I know your consulting business needs you. But when you can, we could turn this into a shared journey. The proposal caught her by surprise. You want me to be part of your project? Emma asked, something warm expanding in her chest. It wasn't just love, but deep recognition. Gabriel wasn't just including her in his plans. He was inviting her to be part of his passion, his most personal work. More than that, he replied, his eyes reflecting the sunset. I want it to be our project. Your skills with people, your ability to see beyond the surface, that would bring a completely new dimension to the work. Emma didn't respond immediately. There were practical considerations, her newly established consulting business, clients, who depended on her, the logistics of working remotely. But there was also an opportunity for growth, for shared adventure, for creating something meaningful together. We can make it work, she said finally, the decision crystallizing in her mind. I can alternate periods on the road with you and periods here, serving clients. Technology exists for a reason, right? Gabriel's smile illuminated his entire face. So, that's a yes? It's a, let's figure out how to make this work, Emma replied, leaning in to kiss him. The following weeks were dedicated to preparations. Emma reorganized her client schedule, implemented video conferencing systems, trained an assistant for periods when she would be absent. Gabriel mapped routes, made preliminary contacts with communities, secured funding through a cultural foundation. It was during these preparations that the phone call came. Richard Mitchell, Gabriel's father, had suffered a heart attack. The private hospital was a monument to cutting-edge medicine and privilege. Silent corridors, renowned doctors, discreet nurses. Helena was sitting in the corridor, posture impeccable as always, but with a tiredness in her eyes that all control couldn't disguise. When she saw Gabriel, something in her expression softened. When she noticed Emma beside him, firmly holding his hand, a brief smile crossed her lips. He's stable, Helena informed, standing to embrace her son. a rare gesture of physical affection between them. But it was serious. Very serious. "What do the doctors say?" Gabriel asked, concern evident in his voice despite months of distance from the family. That he needs to slow down, leave the company, rest. Helena let out a humorless laugh. Everything Richard would never accept doing. Emma remained slightly apart, respecting the family moment, but Gabriel kept her hand firmly held, anchoring himself to her. "Can I see him?" he asked. Helena nodded. "He's awake, and he asked for you." Gabriel turned to Emma, a silent question in his eyes. "Go," she encouraged softly. "I'll be here when you come out." When Gabriel disappeared into the room, Emma prepared for uncomfortable silence with Helena. To her surprise, the older woman indicated the seat beside her. "Thank you for bringing him," Helena said simply. "He would have come anyway," Emma replied. "He's his father." "Yes, but I'm not sure he would have had the strength to face Richard alone. Not after everything." Helena studied Emma with perceptive eyes. "You make him stronger." The comment caught Emma off guard. It was almost a compliment, coming from a woman who had once considered her completely inadequate for her son. "He makes me stronger too," Emma replied honestly. A silence followed, not exactly comfortable, but less tense than it could be. "You seem happy," Helena observed finally. "We are," Emma confirmed without elaborating. She didn't need to justify their happiness to Helena, or to anyone. The older woman nodded slowly, looking at the empty corridor ahead. "You know, when I was young, I also had a choice to make," she said, her voice softer than usual. "Between duty and something else. I chose duty. I thought it was the right choice, the mature choice." Emma remained silent, recognizing the rare openness Helena was offering. "I don't regret it," Helena continued, automatically straightening her shoulders. "I had a good life, wonderful children, material comfort. But I always wondered, what could have been," Emma completed softly. Helena turned to face her, unusual vulnerability in her eyes. "When I first saw you and Gabriel together, I saw everything I feared. History repeating itself. My son abandoning his duty, his legacy for feelings." She paused, carefully choosing the next words. "But now, seeing how he is, how you both are, I'm beginning to think maybe history isn't repeating itself. Maybe it's being rewritten." It was as close to approval as Helena would ever offer, and Emma accepted it for what it was. Not enthusiastic blessing, but reluctant recognition that perhaps, just perhaps, Gabriel and Emma had found a path she herself hadn't been brave enough to follow. When Gabriel came out of the room almost an hour later, his eyes were red, but there was a peace in his face that Emma didn't expect. "How was it?" she asked quietly when he joined them. "Surprisingly well," Gabriel replied, sitting between Emma and his mother. "He wants me to come back." Emma felt her heart tighten. After everything, after the new life they had built, Richard Mitchell was still trying to pull Gabriel back into the corporate world, into the family legacy. "To the company?" she asked, trying to keep her voice neutral. Gabriel shook his head, a small smile appearing on his lips. "To the board only. As a consultant, not executive. He said maybe he pushed me too hard." Gabriel seemed almost incredulous, repeating the words. "He said he saw the photos I published, that they're good, that maybe I found my own path, after all." Helena seemed as surprised as her son. "Richard said that. Seems like almost dying makes a man reconsider his priorities," Gabriel replied, slight bitterness mixing with relief in his voice. In the days that followed, as Richard slowly recovered, a new dynamic began to form. Gabriel visited his father regularly, their conversations evolving from superficial subjects to deeper discussions about life choices, expectations, regrets. Emma accompanied him occasionally, maintaining respectful distance, but gradually being included in family conversations. It was during one of these visits that Richard finally directly addressed their relationship. "So," he said, sitting in a chair in the hospital garden where doctors allowed him to spend a few hours daily, "you're the young woman who made my son abandon everything we built for him." There was no accusation in his voice, just direct, almost clinical curiosity. "Dad," Gabriel warned, but Emma placed a hand on his arm. "Your son made his own decisions," she replied calmly, facing the older man without intimidation. "I was just there to support him when he chose to be true to himself, not to others' expectations." Richard studied her for a long moment, his eyes so similar to Gabriel's but colder, more calculating, evaluating every detail. "Sincerity," he commented finally, the same comment he had made the first time he met her. "I still admire that." A silence followed, interrupted only by the distant sound of traffic and birds. "You seem well together," Richard said finally, surprising. Both Gabriel and Emma. Different, but complementary. It was as close to approval as they would receive from him. Not enthusiastic, not effusive, but an objective recognition of a reality he had been forced to accept. When they left the GE hospital that day, Gabriel seemed lighter, as if a weight had been partially removed from his shoulders. "That was unexpected," he commented, as they walked through the parking lot. "People can surprise," Emma replied, intertwining her fingers with his, especially when confronted with their own mortality. Gabriel nodded, thoughtful. "I think the Coast project will have to wait a bit," he said after a moment. "I can't leave my father now, not when he's finally trying." "Of course," Emma agreed immediately. "Family first." Gabriel stopped, turning to face her with sudden intensity. "You're my family now, Emma. You know that, right?" The words hit her with unexpected force. Despite months living together, building a shared life, they rarely used such definitive terms to describe what they had. "I know," she replied softly. "And that means your needs, your dreams, are as important as mine or my birth family's," Gabriel continued, holding her hands between his. "If you want to move forward with your plans, expand the consulting business while I'm here helping my father, I completely support it." It was this generosity of spirit, this ability to prioritize her happiness even in difficult moments, that made Emma love Gabriel more and more deeply. "We can postpone some plans," she replied, "but not abandon them. Maybe it's time to plant roots a little deeper before we leave for the next adventure." Gabriel's smile illuminated his tired face. "Deep roots," he repeated, as if testing the concept. "I like the idea." In the following months, as Richard gradually recovered, Emma and Gabriel found a new balance. Her consulting business grew, attracting clients who valued her direct approach and knowledge of the corporate world. Gabriel divided his time between visits to his father, his work on the company board, now on his own terms, and local photographic projects. The relationship with the Mitchell family evolved slowly. Helena, perhaps inspired by fear of losing her husband, began making small gestures of approach. Invitations for occasional lunches, questions about Emma's work, even a visit to the seaside house the couple shared. "It's smaller than I expected," was Helena's comment upon entering for the first time, her eyes scanning the cozy but modest living room. "It's perfect for us," Gabriel replied, firmness in his voice that silenced any additional criticism his mother might have. To Emma's surprise, Helena nodded. "Yes, I can see that. It has personality." Coming from Helena Mitchell, it was practically effusive praise. Richard, once recovered enough to leave the hospital, also made efforts to rebuild his relationship with his son. His methods were more practical, discussions about the company board, unsolicited advice about investments, direct questions about Gabriel's future plans. "That Coast project," he asked during a dinner, months after his heart attack. "Do you still intend to do it?" Gabriel exchanged a glance with Emma before responding. Yes, eventually, when the time is right. Richard nodded, thoughtful. The family foundation could finance it, he offered casually. As an official cultural project. It would be good for the company's image and would give you the necessary resources to do something really meaningful. The offer surprised Gabriel. It wasn't just money. It was public recognition of his work as a photographer, legitimization of his chosen path. I'll think about it, he replied cautiously. Later, alone at home, Gabriel and Emma discussed the proposal. What do you think? He asked, genuinely interested in her opinion. Would it be an acceptable compromise? Emma considered carefully before responding. I think it depends on the conditions. If it comes with demands, creative control, rigid deadlines, maybe it's not worth it. But if it's just financial support, with freedom to execute the project our way, she shrugged. It could work. Gabriel smiled, admiring her clarity of thought. Always practical, he commented, pulling her closer. That's why we make a good team. That, and the fact that you bring the romanticism that balances my pragmatism, Emma replied, kissing him softly. The conversation about the future continued in the following weeks. Not just about the photographic project, but about the life they wanted to build together long-term. They were frank discussions, sometimes difficult, but always honest. Do you want children? Gabriel asked one night. The question arising naturally during a conversation about the future. Emma hesitated, the question touching deep insecurities. I don't know, she replied honestly. I was never sure if I would be a good mother. My own mother did her best, but was always working, always struggling to survive. I didn't exactly have a traditional model of motherhood. Gabriel listened attentively, as he always did when she spoke about her childhood. And you? Emma asked, turning the question to him. I always imagined an heir like you would have the obligation to produce the next in the line of succession. Gabriel grimaced upon hearing the words heir and line of succession. That was the expectation, yes, he admitted. But it was never something I particularly desired. Not because I don't like children, but because I feared being like my father, absent, focused on work, unable to show affection. They remained, silent for a moment, each considering the other's insecurities. Maybe we don't need to decide now, Emma suggested finally. Maybe we can just see where life takes us. Gabriel nodded, relieved they didn't need a definitive answer at that moment. One day at a time, he suggested, recalling their initial agreement. One day at a time, Emma agreed, snuggling against him. The Coast project finally began to take concrete shape. After careful negotiations, Gabriel accepted funding from the family foundation, but with clear terms that guaranteed his creative independence. Emma organized her consulting business to allow remote work during parts of the year, with periodic trips back to serve clients personally. Their plans were almost finalized when, on a common Sunday afternoon, while organizing equipment and itineraries, the doorbell rang. Emma opened the door to find a woman who seemed strangely familiar, though she was sure she had never met her. Dark hair like Gabriel's, the same penetrating eyes but with a softer, less guarded expression. You must be Emma, the woman said, a slight European accent coloring her words. I'm Camilla, Gabriel's sister. Emma was momentarily speechless. Gabriel's sister, who lived in Europe, who was rarely mentioned, who was absent even from family photographs. Is Gabriel home? Camilla asked, when the silence extended. Yes, of course, come in, please, Emma recovered, opening the door wider. He's in the office. I'll call him. When Gabriel saw his sister, his face registered a sequence of emotions: surprise, joy, confusion, a shadow of old hurt. Camilla, he said, embracing her at length. What are you doing here? Why didn't you let us know you were coming? I got a call from Mom about Dad, she explained, stepping back. I got a call from Mom about Dad, she explained, stepping back to study her brother's face. And I thought it was time for a visit, don't you think? To meet your new house, your new life. your companion. Camilla's gaze turned to Emma, curious but friendly. Mum mentioned you were different from the women Gabriel used to know. She wasn't exaggerating. There was something in Camilla's tone, a slight amusement, a complicity, that immediately made Emma like her. I hope that's a compliment, Emma replied with a smile. The highest, Camilla assured. Anyone who makes my brother abandon the predetermined path of the Mitchell dynasty deserves my eternal admiration. Gabriel rolled his eyes, but there was affection in his gesture. Camilla was always the family rebel, he explained to Emma. She paved the way for my own rebellion, years later. Someone had to be the first to break the mold, Camilla replied with an elegant shrug. Though I chose the most dramatic method, fleeing to another continent. Camilla's unexpected visit brought new energy to the house. She was everything Helena wasn't, expressive, direct, warm. She told childhood stories that painted a completely different portrait of the Mitchell family, moments of tension, but also of affection, of imperfect but real connections. Gabriel was always Dad's favorite, Camilla explained during dinner, animated gestures accompanying her words. The heir, the legacy's continuator. I was, well, the daughter. Useful for a matrimonial alliance eventually, but not essential to the empire. There was no bitterness in her voice, just objective acceptance of how she had been raised. So, at 18, I announced I was going to study art in Paris. I didn't ask permission, just informed. Camilla smiled at the memory. I think it was the first time I saw Dad truly speechless. You opened a crack in his perfect system, Gabriel commented, serving more wine for everyone. A variable he couldn't control. Exactly, and it was the best decision I ever made. Camilla raised her glass in a silent toast. Just like you did, apparently. Late that night, when Camilla had retired to the guest room, Gabriel and Emma remained on the porch, watching the ocean under moonlight. Your sister is incredible, Emma commented, leaning against his chest. Why do you almost never talk about her? Gabriel sighed, his arms tightening around her. Because her departure was a breaking point in the family. My father never completely forgave her for choosing her own path. My mother, well, I think she secretly admired Camilla's courage but never dared show it. And you? I resented her for a while, Gabriel admitted, for leaving me alone to carry all the expectations, for choosing freedom while I remained trapped by legacy, he paused, reflecting. But now I realize she showed me it was possible to choose another path, that there was life beyond what our parents planned. I just took longer to find my own courage. Emma turned in his arms, studying his face in the moonlight. And you found it, she said softly. You found your courage. Gabriel smiled, touching the small blue pendant Emma still wore around her neck. I found you, he corrected, and that gave me courage. Camilla's visit lasted only a few days but left a profound mark. Before leaving, she insisted on a complete family dinner. Richard, Helena, Gabriel, Emma, and herself gathered at the Mitchell house for the first time in years. Are you sure about this? Emma asked as they prepared for the event. Your last experience at that house wasn't exactly positive. Gabriel adjusted his tie. He hadn't worn one since leaving the corporate world, and found her eyes through the mirror's reflection. This time will be different, he replied with quiet confidence. This time we're going as equals, not as supplicants. And we have Camilla on our side. Emma smiled, recognizing the truth in his words. Camilla's presence had altered family dynamics in subtle but profound ways. Her educated irreverence disarmed Richard. Her genuine affection softened Helena. Her complicity strengthened Gabriel. For the occasion, Emma chose a simple but elegant dress, not to impress the Mitchell family, but to feel comfortable in her own skin. No longer the intimidated employee in inappropriate clothing, but a confident woman secure in her place in the world. The Mitchell mansion seemed different this time, Less intimidating, less like an impenetrable fortress, and more like what it really was. A large house where an imperfect family lived. Helena received them at the door, behavior more relaxed than Emma had ever seen. Camilla insisted on helping in the kitchen, she explained, leading them to the living room. Apparently, she learned to cook in Paris and considers my chef too conventional. There was a note of reluctant amusement in her voice, as if she were rediscovering a daughter she had lost sight of long ago. Richard waited in the room, serving himself whiskey. He looked older, more fragile after the illness, but his eyes maintained the same penetrating intensity. When he saw Gabriel and Emma, he raised his glass in a silent greeting. "You look well," he commented, indicating seats across from him. "The simpler life apparently suits you." There was no sarcasm in his voice, just a direct, almost clinical observation, typical of Richard Mitchell. "It's a different life," Gabriel corrected politely. "Not necessarily simpler." Richard nodded, accepting the correction. "And your consulting business?" he asked, turning to Emma. "I've been hearing good things in the market. Small businesses growing faster than expected, innovative strategies." Emma felt a wave of surprise. Richard Mitchell, financial market magnate, was following her small consulting business for local companies. "It's going well," she replied, maintaining composure. "We focus on practical solutions for companies usually ignored by large consulting firms." "An intelligent niche," Richard commented, something close to approval in his voice. "I always say the best businesses start by identifying unmet needs." The conversation flowed with surprising ease. Business, politics, art, even some family. Stories that Helena and Richard rarely shared. Camilla eventually joined them, bringing energy that transformed the formal living room into an almost welcoming space. During dinner, when conversation turned to the Coast Photographic Project, Richard surprised everyone with a direct question. "And after? When this project is finished, what are your plans?" Gabriel and Emma exchanged quick glances. It was a question they themselves were exploring without definitive answers yet. "We're considering several possibilities," Gabriel replied diplomatically. "I have a proposal," Richard continued, carefully placing his utensils on the plate. "The Family Foundation is expanding its cultural arm. We need someone to lead this division, someone with artistic vision, but also business understanding." A surprised silence followed. It was almost a job offer, not to return to the main company, but to create something new within the family. Structure. "It would be a long-term commitment," Richard continued, looking directly at Gabriel, "but with substantial creative autonomy." Gabriel seemed genuinely surprised. "You're offering this to me?" "To both of you, actually," Richard corrected, his gaze including Emma. "Your partner clearly understands both business and people. The foundation would benefit from that." Emma felt momentarily speechless. It was more than a job offer. It was recognition, legitimization of their relationship, of their professional partnership. "We'd need to discuss the details," Gabriel replied cautiously. "The expectations, the boundaries." "Naturally," Richard agreed. "I don't expect an immediate answer, just consider it." Later, in the car returning home, the proposal hung between them like an unexpected possibility. "What do you think?" Gabriel asked finally, breaking the contemplative silence. "I think your father is finally trying to find middle ground," Emma replied honestly. "A path where he doesn't lose you completely, and you don't lose your freedom." Gabriel considered her words, hands relaxed on the steering wheel. "And how do you feel about working with the Mitchell family again, even indirectly?" Emma looked out the window, watching the city lights pass by. "If you had asked me that a year ago, I would have said it was impossible," she admitted. "But now, things have changed. We've changed. They've changed." Gabriel reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. "We don't have to decide tonight," he reminded. "We have the Coast Project first. Time to think, to plan. One day at a time, Emma murmured, smiling as she remembered their mantra. Always, Gabriel agreed, bringing her hand to his lips. The following weeks were a whirlwind of final preparations for the journey. Photographic equipment, itineraries, contacts in coastal communities, logistical arrangements, Emma's consulting. Business was structured to function partially remotely, with periodic visits to key clients. On the eve of departure, while finalizing the luggage, Gabriel found Emma in the bedroom, sitting on the bed's edge, holding something blue in her hands. "What is that?" he asked, approaching. Emma looked up, a nostalgic smile on her lips. "The dress," she replied simply. "I thought it should come with us. As a talisman, maybe." Gabriel sat beside her, touching the worn fabric with reverence. "Where everything began," he murmured. "Where everything led us," she completed. They remained silent for a moment, contemplating the journey that had brought them there, from the rigid formalities of the corporate office to the intimacy of a shared life, from insecurities and distrust to partnership and mutual understanding. "I have something for you," Gabriel said finally, removing a small box from his pocket. Emma's heart accelerated involuntarily. This time, when she opened the box, she found what she had secretly imagined on the previous occasion, a ring. Simple, elegant, with a small blue stone that matched perfectly with the pendant she already wore. "It's not a traditional proposal," Gabriel explained, his eyes fixed on hers. "I'm not asking you to be my wife in the conventional sense, with all the social expectations that implies." He took the ring, holding it between them. "It's an invitation to continue this journey together, to build something that's ours, on our own terms, to be partners in every possible sense." Emma felt tears forming in her eyes, not from sadness or fear, but from deep-rooted joy. "Yes," she replied simply, extending her hand for him to place the ring. There was no need for more words. The simplicity of the moment, the sincerity of the commitment, transcended elaborate explanations or grandiose declarations. The next morning, they departed at dawn, the rising sun illuminating the road ahead. The SUV was loaded with equipment, maps, hopes. The blue dress, carefully folded, rested in a memory box in the back seat, along with other small treasures collected along the path they had traveled together. As the seaside house disappeared in the rearview mirror, Emma touched the ring on her finger, feeling its comforting weight, its silent promise. "Where to first?" she asked, opening the map in her lap. Gabriel smiled, that smile that still made her heart race, even after all this time. "Wherever the wind takes us," he replied, before correcting himself with a soft laugh. "Or more specifically, to that fishing community in Cape Cod I mentioned." Emma leaned over to kiss his cheek, feeling a wave of gratitude for the improbable sequence of events that had brought them together. A broken washing machine, an inappropriate blue dress, spilled coffee in a meeting, small moments that, together, had completely altered the course of two lives. "You know what I like most about us?" she asked, leaning back in her seat as the landscape passed by the window. "What?" "That we never know exactly where we're going, but we always know we're going together." Gabriel extended his hand, finding hers over the center console, their fingers intertwining with familiar ease. "That's exactly what makes the journey an adventure," he replied. The road stretched ahead, curving along the coast, disappearing on the horizon like an invitation. The future, with its photographic projects, consulting businesses, possibilities at the family foundation, and countless other opportunities not yet imagined, awaited. Not as a fixed destination, but as a path to be explored. And they would explore it. Not as a CEO and an assistant, not as a Mitchell and a Carter, but as Gabriel and Emma. Too unlikely. Lovers united by a blue dress and the courage to choose each other, day after day, against all odds. As the sun climbed the sky, illuminating the ocean to the right and mountains to the left, Emma closed her eyes for a moment, absorbing the sensation of movement, of possibility, of freedom. "Ready?" Gabriel asked, gently squeezing her hand. Emma opened her eyes, finding his briefly before looking at the road ahead. "Always," she replied. And so they continued, carrying with them not just dreams for the future, but also lessons from the past, including that most important one, that sometimes what embarrasses us, what makes us feel inadequate, is exactly what makes us visible in the eyes of those who truly matter. Sometimes, the most extraordinary stories begin with the simplest moments: an inappropriate dress, a different look, an unexpected connection. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to remember that our greatest beginnings often arise from our most vulnerable moments. Want more exciting romances like this? Then subscribe, leave your like and write in the comments what you thought of this story.